Right now, for one of our most important practices, and when I say most important, I'm saying it this way because you really need to make sure you know as much as you can about this particular practice, the incident management practice. So, the purpose of the incident management practice is the practice of minimizing the negative impact of incidents by restoring normal service operation as quickly as possible. So, what exactly is an incident? Well, an incident is an unplanned interruption to a service or a reduction in the quality of a service. So, for example, an unplanned interruption would be the hard drive failing on the server, and now that server is no longer available. Or your switch was magically reconfigured overnight. And as a result, when people came into work in the morning, they couldn't connect to the network and log in. Right? That's an unplanned interruption to your service. Right? A reduction in the quality of service would be the Wi-Fi network is slow, let's say. The internet is slow, slower than normal. Okay, what is normal, right? And then it's slower than what that normal is. Maybe it takes 5 minutes to download a file when normally it takes 5 seconds to download a file. That's a reduction in the quality of service. Maybe voice over IP calls are choppy. They're not clear. They're not smooth. They're choppy now. That's a reduction in the quality of service. So an incident doesn't have to be a complete outage. Okay, an incident can be just a reduction in the quality of what is normally supposed to be provided as that particular service. In addition, nowadays, incidents don't actually have to be affecting the user, right? Where back in the day, an incident was easily identifiable because it affected the user's experience. But nowadays, an incident is anything that changes our service from being normal to abnormal. So, for example, even in scenarios where you have, let's say, a primary server and a backup server, and the primary server fails and everybody's using the backup server, the users are not negatively affected by that situation because they're still able to do what they need to do. But we as IT professionals are negatively affected by that situation because we are no longer operating normally. And as a result of that, we still have an incident on our hands. It's just that this particular incident does not negatively affect our users. Now, if the backup server goes down, then absolutely now it would negatively affect the users. So, with all the redundancy in place we have today, we have the ability to have incidents that don't negatively affect the user, but they are still incidents because they need to be dealt with. So an incident management is what? The practice of minimizing the negative impact of an incident by restoring normal service operation as quickly as possible. So if you have a primary server and a backup server and the primary server fails and everybody's using the backup server, right? The great thing is the user can still do what they need to do. But the question is that normal service operation? No, it's not. That's not normal service operation. Normal service operation is primary server. So today, even that type of situation, as I'm trying to say, is still considered an incident. So it would have to be logged as an incident. You would have to take care of it as an incident to get it back to normal operation. Now, the thing about redundancy is that as quickly as possible can now be different. If you only have one server, as quickly as possible means now, especially if that server is mission critical. But when you have redundancy, primary fails, and everybody's using the backup server, as quickly as possible means what? Well, it doesn't mean now anymore. It means potentially 2 hours or 3 hours, right? Because the backup server is doing its job instead. So it allows you to by having the redundancy, it allows you to deal with those incidents, right, with more time and not having those users negatively affected by that particular incident. But it still has to be treated as an incident. So when it comes to incident management, right, we need to create incident records, we need to diagnose, we need to resolve incidents, we need to escalate incidents to support teams for resolution. There's a lot of different things we need to do in order to accomplish. We need to communicate efficiently and effectively. Now, the thing I need you to do is I need you to be very, very, very well aware of what an incident is really all about, right? We have an incident. And what happens when that incident occurs, right? We could have a disruption to the service for the users if we don't have a backup. But if we do have a backup, then they can continue doing what they need to do. But we still have to resolve this incident, right? So we need to have target resolution times for that incident. Those target resolution times need to be agreed upon. They need to be documented. They need to be communicated. Right? The last thing sales wants to do is be left in the dark when a service that they are relying on fails, or finance to be left in the dark when a service they are relying on fails. So it's really important as part of incident management that we communicate those target resolution times, and they are based on what? The needs, the business needs of those actual particular users. So gone are the days where we treat external customers differently than internal customers. External customers, because they were paying revenue, we were always, doing extra special things for them. Oh yeah, something goes down, we're on it right away. Well, nowadays, your internal customers are supposed to be just as important as the external customers, even though they're not paying revenue, because in the end, you're indirectly making money off those internal customers. They're part of the business. They're working for the business. If something goes wrong, you want to get them back up and running as quickly as possible, just like you'd want to for those paying external customers if you had them. Why? Because they need to get back to work. They need to do their jobs. They need to do what they do for the company so the company can be successful. So making sure that you have those target resolution times based on their requirements, their needs, and it's documented, communicated is really, really, really important, even for those internal customers. So what I want you to realize about incidents and incident management is that you don't care here about solving problems. Right? And this is where you're going to get stuck on the exam if you're not clear about this. What did I say what an incident was? An unplanned interruption of service or a reduction in the quality of the service. And we said incident management is the practice of minimizing the negative impact of incidents by restoring normal service operation as quickly as possible. So let me give you an example that should help you really understand what we're really trying to do with incident management. How many of you are familiar with BSOD? Blue screen of death. If you get a blue screen of death on your server, what do you have? You have an incident on your hands because the service is not normally operating anymore. So let me ask you this question, folks. What is one of the first things you are going to do to that server to try to restore normal service operation as quickly as possible? All right, so let's say you were able to gather the information you need, whatever it was. You've got all that. What are you going to do? Power cycle, reboot. Okay, good. Exactly what I was looking for. Power cycle, reboot the system. Unplug it, plug it back in. And let's say the server comes back up and it's working just fine. And there's no issue anymore. Have you successfully resolved the incident? Have you accomplished this purpose? Yes, you have. You have minimized the negative impact of the incident, and you have restored normal service operation as quickly as possible. You've done it. Incident management is done. You logged it, you managed it, you prioritized it, you diagnosed it, you resolved it. You are done. That's all incident management is. Now, is there potentially an underlying problem that caused this? Yes, of course there is. Have we solved that? No, we haven't. Do we care about that with incident management? No, we don't. That's what you need to know for the exam. That's why I use this as an example. Now, what if you tried to reboot it, but it didn't work? Okay, well then the incident is not resolved, and yes, you will have to solve the problem to resolve the incident. But if you reboot it and everything's working fine, then you have resolved the incident without solving the problem, which is okay. Am I saying to ignore the problem? No, I'm not. What I'm saying is incident management is done. So be careful about that on the certification exam. If they're asking you about specifically incident management, you're not solving problems. You are doing what? You are restoring normal service operation as quickly as possible. And if what you try doesn't work, then yes, you got to solve the problem. For example, right? If the server's hard drive fails, poof, it's gone. Okay, well, obviously you have an incident, and the only way to resolve that incident is to solve the problem. So are you going to try to solve the incident right now? No, because you know that the only way to solve that incident is to do what? Solve the problem, which is replace the hard drive with a new one, restore data from backup, etc., etc. Okay, that is for a totally different practice. So problem management is a different practice. Okay, incident management just focuses on, hey, do what you can do to get this back up and running as quickly as possible. We'll deal with the real reason after the fact, later on. If you can. If you can't, then you got to deal with the problem to get the incident resolved. So does that mean you can have incidents without a problem? No. All problems cause incidents, okay? But can you have a problem without an incident right now? The answer to that one is yes. Because in my example, when I reboot this server, is the incident resolved? Yes, we no longer have an incident, but we still have a problem that we're going to have to figure out later on. Right. So when I talk about problem management, I'm going to remind you about this. Because the odds of seeing both problem management stuff and incident management stuff in the same question on the exam is like 100%. So you got to be crystal clear about the differences between the two. What do we need? We need detailed procedures with incident management. Detailed procedures for logging the incidents, managing the incidents, prioritizing the incidents, categorizing the incidents, diagnosing the incidents, resolving the incidents. Based on what? Based on their business impact. Prioritization and categorization is critically important. Why? Because when you prioritize and categorize your incidents, you're identifying how important they are and the impact that they will have on your business, on your organization. So high priority items can be dealt with first. Low priority items can be dealt with later on. Right? Also, when it comes to categorization, right, we can have different categories for incidents. So that way they're based on the category. We want to deal with these ones first based on their categories, and these other ones based on their categories we can do later on. Also, when it comes to things like cybersecurity incidents, they would have a category of their own, and they would be very highly prioritized. A major incident, like maybe a complete outage of a site or a natural disaster, anything like that, would have, again, categorization of its own, major incident category. So we can deal with those immediately, high priority items as well. And the idea here is to make sure that we're maximizing the resources of our people on our service desk, making sure that we are using the resources as efficiently, as effectively as possible, getting those incidents dealt with as quickly and efficiently as possible, and making sure we're not wasting time or energy. And so things that can be escalated based on their prioritization and categorization can be done so right away, where other things that can be handled by other people can be handled by other people. So prioritization and categorization, very, very, very critical part of incident management. When assessing an incident, urgency and business impact help define the priority. So how urgent is this? What is the impact on our business? Right. It's going to be part of your prioritization, part of your categorization. Scripts should be used to help collect information. So right from the get-go, when an incident occurs and you need to collect initial information, it's important to have scripts so that way there we don't miss out on any information that should be collected. The last thing we want to have to do is go back and get more information, especially if a user is reporting the incident. It's better for us while they're reporting it to interact with them right away. So making sure our scripts outline, you must have this and this and this and this and this and whatever it happens to be, right? It will be dependent on your organization and what you want to collect. Also, there are best practices. Again, you don't have to know them at ITIL v4 foundation levels, but at higher levels of ITIL, they're going to outline, what things you should consider collecting. We won't cover them here as part of foundations, but scripts, very important. right? And the scripts don't have to be like a document that somebody opens up, like an old binder with laminated pages that say, okay, ask this, get this, get this. Nowadays, it can be built into our systems, our tools that we are using for incident management, meaning that it's just going to have everything laid out. This is mandatory field, fill it in, 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 fill it in. So it just guides you along the way. Collect what you need. So that way there we have everything in the initial collection phase that's going to help us with dealing with this incident as we progress through it. Also, you're going to have simple incidents, you're going to have more complicated incidents, and then you're going to have really complex incidents that arise. It's imperative that simple incidents can be solved as quickly and efficiently as possible right away using scripts. So have scripts that your service desk professionals can use while they are doing incident management. So that way they can handle those simple incidents immediately, efficiently, and effectively, and they don't have to escalate them. They don't have to push them on. That way we can ensure that our subject matter experts behind the scenes, our more knowledgeable staff, that are they have the ability to be freed up from these simpler incidents, and they can be focusing on those more complex incidents that require a massive amount of resources and investigations to solve them. In addition, something may look like a simple incident at first. And so the service desk professional tries some of the recommendations and it doesn't work to solve that incident. So in the end, yes, we still escalate at that point in time. So the service desk professionals, right, they're owning these incidents from the beginning right till the end when they can notify the customer that the incident has been resolved. But they're collecting the information and then they're trying to manage that particular incident. So they got to prioritize it, they got to diagnose it. Then what can they do? They can go ahead and see if they can try and solve those incidents. Now, if it's something that can be solved because their scripts available, great, done. Like reboot the server. So if we have a system that they can log into and reboot the server through a software system that then cuts the power, redoes the power, system turns back on, system comes back up and running, incident resolved, great. Blue screen of death's gone, incident resolved. Problem still exists, right? But the incident is resolved. And now, since the problem still exists, can we now escalate the problem to the subject matter experts? Of course we can. But at least the users are back up and running and they can do what they need to do. Now, that's not going to happen in all scenarios. There are going to be scenarios where you can't solve the incident until the problem's solved. But when you can solve that, right, you want to take advantage of that. So therefore, having the right tools and techniques is really, really important. Being able to collaborate is extremely important when it comes to incident management, because the only way we're going to be able to ensure that we are resolving those incidents as efficiently and effectively as we possibly can is to have the tools and the techniques and the ability to collaborate to accomplish that. Also, we want tools that allow us to do things like automated matching. So what happens is in a lot of large organizations is you end up with incidents coming in and the incidents are being recorded. But if there's no way to correlate those incidents to each other, then we often end up in situations where there's a lot of tickets that are open, but they're all related to approximately the same incident, and they haven't been matched together. So what happens is there's a lot of wasted time, wasted effort, wasted energy. Whereas if you had tools that could do automated matching that in real time could recognize that as this ticket's being created and this ticket's being created and this ticket's being created, they are all one and the same. They all have the same symptoms. They are all producing the same incident. Then they can be amalgamated together, and therefore one person can deal with it all when it's said and done, instead of having 3 or 4 people trying to deal with it all at the exact same time. It just allows you to be more efficient and effective. When it comes to security incidents, important point to note for the certification exam, you're definitely going to want a separate set of incident management processes and to go with security incidents. So you would have your normal incident management plan and practice and approach and workflow for your typical incidents or non-security incident related incidents, as we'll call them, as we see here on the slide. And what you do is you go through those for all of those. But when you have an incident that arises and you recognize that it's a security related incident, then you want to be able to categorize that as a security related incident and prioritize it at a pretty high level. So that way you can now trigger a separate process. You're going to hand this off right away. You don't want to be hanging on to this as a service desk professional doing the incident management practice. You want to make sure that once you prioritize that and categorize it as security related, it's now the security incident management practice that goes ahead and gets triggered. Security incident practice that gets triggered. Why? Because you want to ensure that it's handled and dealt with right away. Because the quicker you can contain that security incident, the less spread that occurs with that security related incident. So it's stressed in ITIL with incident management that once it's recognized it's security related, you have to have a completely separate approach where the subject matter experts can basically drop everything they're doing and jump in to isolate, contain, and now start the security incident management process that you have in place. And the same thing would be true with any major incidents that cause disasters. Any major incidents that cause disasters, you want to have a separate incident process for that as well. So that way there you can trigger your disaster recovery process because of those major incidents, because it's more than just resolving one incident at that point in time. You are trying to recover a lot of things that have been brought down because of that particular disaster. So definitely having a separate process for that as well is really, really important. All right, so I provided with you a lot of information there, folks, for incident management. Definitely know the purpose of it, know the definition of incident, know a lot of the little extra bullet points I provided to you there. It is a learning outcome number 7, so you're going to have to be able to explain it, meaning more than just the purpose in terms of definitions. Make sure you really fully understand what you're trying to accomplish here. You're trying to restore normal service operation as quickly as possible. So if they do give you a scenario and they're asking you which would be an example based on the scenario of incident management, look for the one that is about restoring normal service operation as quickly as possible, not the one about solving the problem or fixing whatever it is. No, it's about getting the user back up and running. It's about getting the service back up and running as fast as possible, regardless of whether the problem's being solved